My therapist didn't just cross a line, she sprinted past it like it was a suggestion. 6 months of me paying her to help me survive my breakup, and she was quietly dating my ex the whole time. I found out by accident in the one place I was supposed to be safe. And when I tell you what she said when she got caught, you're going to feel your blood pressure rise. Tell me right now, would you forgive this? I'm Harper, 28, graphic designer, lover of wine, and the kind of person who used to believe therapy was a sacred space. Like, no matter how messy your life gets, at least the person you're paying $200 an hour won't actively light your world on fire. Cute belief. Embarrassing, actually. Let me back up. 3 months ago, I was sitting in Dr. Olivia Hartley's office for what I didn't know would be my last session. Not because I was healed, not because I found myself or embraced the journey or whatever inspirational poster nonsense people say. It was my last session because I was about to discover the kind of betrayal that makes you question whether the universe is a prankster with a mean streak. I'd been seeing Olivia for 6 months after my boyfriend Jackson dumped me out of nowhere. 3 years together, the kind of relationship where you're not casually dating, you're building a life. One week we're planning a Costa Rica trip, the next week he's sitting on my couch using that dead-eyed, "I need space to find myself" line, like he didn't just copy-paste it from the official handbook of men who want to disappear without consequences. And I'm not saying people can't break up. Break up, fine, but don't do it like you're returning a toaster. Don't act like your emotions are deep and complicated while you're emotionally evacuating the building with no alarm. I spiraled, obviously. I did the thing where you replay every conversation, every text, every "I love you," and you start hunting for the exact moment you became disposable. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and when I did eat, it tasted like cardboard and regret. So I did the mature, responsible thing. I found a therapist. Enter Olivia Hartley. Picture this. Elegant blazers, dark hair always in a perfect bun, voice so soothing it could talk a hurricane into sitting down and journaling. She had that calm, professional vibe that makes you trust her immediately, which is hilarious in hindsight because I trusted her like she was a vault. I told her everything, not the surface story, the real story, the embarrassing story, the "I still check his location even though I know it's insane" story. I told her how Jackson and I met at a coffee shop when he accidentally grabbed my oat milk latte and tried to play it off like destiny. I told her how he used to leave little notes in my jacket pockets, like he was auditioning for the role of best boyfriend ever, and I fully cast him. I told her the breakup felt like waking up mid-surgery. One second you're fine, the next you're bleeding and nobody's explaining why. Olivia nodded like she was absorbing my pain and translating it into wisdom. She'd say things like, "Harper, have you considered that Jackson might be dealing with his own issues?" And I'd sit there thinking, wow, she's right. Maybe he's running from himself, not from me. Meanwhile, apparently, he wasn't running from anything. He was just running straight into her office. And yes, I'm going to say it plainly because someone has to. When a therapist involves themselves with a client's partner or ex, that isn't a romance. That's exploitation with better lighting. It's taking someone's vulnerability, the thing they paid you to protect, and using it like a shopping list. It's like a firefighter setting your house on fire and then charging you for a glass of water. And I didn't know any of that yet. I was still in the stage where I thought therapy was a safe place, and Olivia was a safe person. That Tuesday in October, I finished my session around 4 p.m. like always. I left emotionally drained, the way you get after you've cried into a tissue box for an hour and then tried to stand up and pretend you're fine. I walked out, got halfway to my car in the parking garage, and realized I'd forgotten my phone. I do that sometimes when my brain is fried. So I turned around, went back up to the 3rd floor of the medical building, and the waiting room was empty. Receptionist gone, quiet. The door to Olivia's office was slightly open. I was about to knock, and then I heard it. A laugh. His laugh. Jackson's laugh. You know how you can recognize someone's laugh in a crowded room? It hits your brain like a fingerprint. My hand froze midair. I swear my body knew before my mind could catch up. Olivia giggled. Actually giggled, not professional therapist chuckle, not polite office laughter, giggled like a woman on a date. She said, "You're terrible," in that flirty voice women use when they're pretending they're mad but they're actually delighted, and Jackson said, "Come here." I pushed the door a crack open and I saw them, on the couch where I'd cried about him, the couch where I'd confessed my most humiliating insecurities, the couch where Olivia had nodded sympathetically while taking notes like she was studying me for a test. Jackson had his hands in her hair, which was down now, cascading over her shoulders. Her blazer was on the floor. They were kissing like teenagers who think they're the first people on earth to ever be horny. I stood there for what felt like hours, but it was probably 5 seconds. Then Olivia opened her eyes. We made direct eye contact, and I watched her face transform in real time. You know that moment when someone's mask slips and you see the panic behind it? That. Her eyes went wide, her mouth parted. The horror set in, not because she suddenly developed a conscience, but because she got caught. She started, "Harper," like she was about to launch into some explanation. I didn't wait. I grabbed my phone from the chair near the door and walked out. Not ran, walked. Because there's a specific type of rage where your body goes cold and your movements get precise, like you're trying not to shatter into 1,000 pieces in public. I got to my car, sat down, and stared at the steering wheel like it had answers. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my keys. And then the questions hit like waves. How long? When did it start? Was she talking to him while I was in that room? Was that why he broke up with me? Was Olivia the reason my relationship died, or was she just the maggot that showed up after it was already rotting? My phone buzzed. Olivia calling. Decline. Then she called again. Decline. Then a text. "Harper, please let me explain. This isn't what it looks like." That sentence should be illegal, because what else could it possibly look like? 2 people kissing on the therapy couch where I paid to process my heartbreak about him? My brain did this weird thing where it wanted to laugh and vomit at the same time. Then a text from Jackson. "Harper, I'm sorry you found out this way." Not sorry he did it, sorry I found out. That's like stabbing someone and saying, "I'm sorry you saw the knife." I drove home in a blur. My roommate Mason took one look at my face and poured me a glass of wine without asking. That's how you know you live with someone who's seen you go through things. I told him, "My therapist is sleeping with Jackson." Mason's jaw dropped like a cartoon. "Your therapist, Olivia? The one you've been paying?" "Yes." "That's not legal." He said it like he was trying to summon the police by speaking it out loud. I didn't even know if it was illegal at first. I just knew it was disgusting. So I did what any rational person does after being betrayed by 2 people at once. I Googled. Turns out it's not just morally foul, it's professionally radioactive. Ethics codes exist for a reason. Therapists aren't supposed to have relationships with current clients, and the rules around dual relationships and exploiting client vulnerability are strict because, shocker, therapists have power, they have access, they have your secrets. And Olivia didn't just betray me personally, she violated the entire concept of therapy. Mason said, "You have to report her." And here's where I need you to listen closely, because this is where the story stops being "my ex is trash" and becomes "my therapist is a predator with a license." I wasn't thinking about revenge yet. I was thinking about clarity. I needed to understand how deep the rot went. And then I remembered something Olivia mentioned once, casually, like background noise. She was married. I'd seen her ring. She'd referenced her husband in those smug little examples therapists use when they talk about communication like it's a cute hobby.
and the moment I remembered she had a husband, something in me snapped into place. Because if she could do this to me, a paying client sitting right in front of her, what was she doing at home? Was her husband living in a lie too? And more importantly, did he know he was married to someone who treated other people's pain like entertainment? That night, I did something I'm not proud of, but I'm also not pretending I regret it. I researched. I found her husband, Ethan Hartley, a professor at the State University, American Literature, faculty page, kind eyes, warm smile, the kind of man who looks like he would lend you a book and actually remember to return it. His social media was public, which in hindsight was optimistic. He posted pictures with Olivia, beach trips, weddings, hiking, normal couple highlight reel. His latest post was their golden retriever, Hemingway, with a caption about dad jokes. And that hit me in the chest in a weird way, because it's always the innocent details that make betrayal feel nastier.
I met Ethan the next day, and I need you to picture this clearly because this is where everything stopped feeling like a messy breakup story and started feeling like a psychological thriller. Sterling Coffee was one of those places that pretends it's casual but is absolutely designed for intense conversations. Exposed brick, low lighting, overpriced drinks, the kind of space where people confess affairs and end marriages. Ethan was already there when I walked in, sitting in a corner booth with a black coffee he hadn't touched. He looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with disappointment. When he looked up and said my name, I knew immediately that he believed me. That's the thing nobody talks about. You can feel when someone already knows something is wrong but hasn't had proof yet. I slid into the seat across from him, and before I could talk myself out of it, I pulled out my phone and showed him everything. Olivia's texts, Jackson's apology, the timestamps, the evidence that proved this wasn't a misunderstanding or a one-time lapse in judgment. Ethan read in silence, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the screen like if he looked away, the truth might escape. When I finished, he leaned back and stared at the wall for a long moment, then said something that made my stomach drop. He said, "This isn't the first time." I actually blinked and said, "What?" Because my brain refused to accept that someone who sits in an office listening to people's trauma for a living could also be a repeat offender. He told me she'd cheated before, not with clients, but with coworkers, friends, people who were supposed to be off limits. Each time she cried, apologized, promised therapy would fix it, promised she understood boundaries now, and each time he stayed because he loved her and because she was very good at convincing people that they were the problem for reacting. If you've ever been in a relationship where you start questioning your own instincts because someone keeps explaining your pain away, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's when it clicked for me. Olivia didn't just betray me, she practiced betrayal. She had turned manipulation into a lifestyle. I asked Ethan what he was going to do, and he looked at me with this tired honesty that made my chest ache and said, "I don't know, but I think you should report her." That moment mattered more than anything else, because this wasn't me destroying a marriage or seeking revenge in a blind rage. This was the person most affected by her behavior telling me to stop protecting her from consequences. I filed the complaint that week. I didn't embellish, I didn't dramatize. I told the truth, which was already ugly enough. I included session dates, texts, the timeline that proved she was treating me while involved with my ex, the ethical violations that exist specifically to prevent this kind of abuse. And here's where the rage part kicks in, because Olivia didn't respond with accountability. She responded with gaslighting. She left me voicemails saying I was confused, emotional, misinterpreting things. She implied I was unstable, that therapy had blurred my perceptions. Do you understand how dangerous that is? A therapist trying to discredit a client by weaponizing mental health language? That's not just unethical, that's predatory. When the board opened an investigation, Olivia didn't apologize. She didn't reflect, she panicked. She showed up at my apartment uninvited, crying, begging, demanding I withdraw the complaint because I was ruining her life. Mason had to physically block the door while she stood in the hallway insisting I owed her silence. Let me ask you something, and answer honestly in the comments. If someone betrays you, then tries to bully you into covering it up so they don't face consequences, do they deserve mercy or do do they deserve accountability? Drop accountability if you think I did the right thing, or too far if you think reporting her crossed a line. Because here's the thing nobody warns you about. When you stop protecting someone's lies, the fallout is loud. Olivia's practice dropped her. The board suspended her license pending investigation. Word spread quietly at first, then faster. And Jackson? Oh, Jackson suddenly had a lot of feelings when the woman he loved started losing everything that made her impressive. He called me crying, actually crying, saying I was destroying something real, that Olivia and he were in love, that I was bitter and vindictive. And I said something I'd been holding in for months. I said, "You bonded with my therapist over my trauma. That's not love, that's parasitic." Silence. He hung up. Ethan filed for divorce 2 weeks later. He told me he was tired of being collateral damage in someone else's selfishness. And here's where things get complicated in a way I didn't expect. Ethan and I kept talking, not romantically, not yet, just two people who had been lied to by the same woman in different ways. We talked about trust, patterns, how manipulators reuse scripts on different people. We compared notes and realized Olivia said the same phrases to both of us when she was cornered. Same apologies, same excuses, same "I'm just misunderstood." That's when I realized this wasn't about jealousy or romance, it was about power. Olivia liked being the smartest person in the room, the one who knew everyone's weaknesses, the one who never faced consequences because people kept cleaning up after her. And for the first time, nobody was doing that anymore. The investigation took months. Her license was eventually revoked. Permanently. Jackson disappeared the second she stopped being impressive. Ethan finalized the divorce, and somewhere in the middle of all that wreckage, something unexpected happened. The rage burned off. What was left was clarity, and clarity changes people. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to answer this honestly. If you were in my position, would you have walked away quietly, or would you have burned the lie to the ground, even if it meant being called dramatic, vindictive, or cruel? Comment your answer, because what happened next is the part people argue about the most, and I want to know whose side you're on before you hear it. Clarity is a dangerous thing, and I didn't realize that until the rage faded and I was left with something quieter but sharper. Because once you see manipulation clearly, you can't unsee it. It's like realizing the house you've been living in has been slowly filling with gas, and you just assumed the smell was normal. Ethan and I kept meeting, not because there was some secret attraction I was chasing, but because talking to him felt grounding. He wasn't trying to rewrite history or soften the truth. He didn't minimize what Olivia did or defend her intentions. He called it what it was: abuse of power, repeated betrayal. And the wild part was realizing how similar our experiences were, even though we were on opposite sides of her life. She told him he was too sensitive when he asked questions. She told me I was overthinking when I felt uneasy. She framed herself as the victim every time someone reacted to her actions. If you've ever dealt with someone who somehow turns every confrontation into proof that you're the problem, you know how destabilizing that is. And suddenly, I wasn't ashamed anymore. I wasn't embarrassed that I didn't see it sooner. Because manipulators don't rely on stupidity, they rely on trust. And both Ethan and I had trusted her. That didn't make us weak, it made us human. Over time, our conversations shifted. We talked about our lives outside of Olivia, his students, my design work, the weird quiet after chaos, when you're not sure who you are without the constant adrenaline of being hurt. There was comfort in that, familiarity. And yeah, I noticed things. The way he listened without waiting to talk. The way he didn't flinch when conversations got uncomfortable. The way he never tried to steer my emotions in a direction that benefited him. That alone felt revolutionary after what I'd been through. One night, Mason said something that stopped me cold. He said, "You know you're glowing again, right?" I laughed it off, but it stuck with me because I was. Not because I was winning or getting revenge, but because I wasn't carrying someone else's lies anymore. And that's when I started asking myself a question I didn't want to admit out loud. Was it wrong to feel connected to Ethan? Was I crossing a line by even considering that this could turn into something more? Or was I just internalizing shame that didn't belong to me? Because here's the hypocrisy that made my blood boil. Olivia had no problem violating every ethical boundary imaginable, but the moment I felt something real and mutual and honest, suddenly morality was supposed to be my responsibility? Make that make sense.
Ethan asked me one night, very gently, "Do you ever feel like people confuse accountability with cruelty?" And I knew exactly what he meant. Society loves to tell victims to take the high road, to be gracious, to be quiet, to not make anyone uncomfortable. Meanwhile, the people who cause the damage get endless chances to explain themselves. That realization shifted something fundamental in me. I wasn't interested in being small anymore. I wasn't interested in shrinking my truth so other people could feel less awkward about what happened. And here's where I need you involved, because this is the moment where people start picking sides. Some will say I should have cut all ties, moved cities, started over quietly. Others will say connection after trauma can be healing, not shameful. So tell me in the comments, at this point in the story, do you think I was heading toward another mistake or towards something earned? Drop dangerous if you think I should have walked away, or deserved if you think healing doesn't have to look lonely.
Everything changed the night Ethan kissed me. And I know some of you already clenched your jaw just reading that, so sit with me for a second before you decide how you feel. It wasn't dramatic. No wine-soaked confession, no slow-motion nonsense. We were sitting on opposite ends of his couch, talking about something painfully normal, grocery stores, I think, when the silence stretched and felt different. Not heavy. Honest. He looked at me and said, very quietly, "I need to say this out loud before it turns into something weird in my head. I'm starting to feel more than friendship." And instead of panic, instead of that old familiar dread, my body did something new. It relaxed. That's how I knew this wasn't the same pattern repeating. I told him the truth, that I felt it too, that it scared me, that I didn't want to be a rebound or a revenge headline or a cautionary tale. He said something that still lives in my chest. Then let's not make it any of those things. When he kissed me, it felt grounded, not desperate, like choosing, not grabbing. And here's the part people don't want to admit. Nothing about it felt wrong. What felt wrong was how much I'd been conditioned to believe that I needed to suffer quietly to be considered mature. We took it slow, painfully slow. No hiding, no lying, no sneaking. Meanwhile, Olivia's fallout continued. Her license was officially revoked, permanently. The mental health community closed ranks in that polite, surgical way professionals do when someone becomes radioactive. Jackson left her the second she stopped being impressive. No job, no power, no shine. Suddenly, his soulmate wasn't so soul-connected anymore. He tried to crawl back into my life with paragraphs of self-pity, saying I ruined everything. I blocked him without responding. Growth looks boring like that. Ethan and I eventually went public. One photo, neutral caption, no drama. And the internet did what it always does. Some people called me vindictive. Some called it poetic justice. Some said I crossed a moral line. But here's what nobody talks about. Olivia crossed every line first. She exploited a power imbalance. She manipulated vulnerability. She destroyed trust as a profession. And somehow I was expected to be the one who disappeared quietly so no one felt uncomfortable about it. No, I refused. Ethan moved forward with the divorce, I moved forward with my life. And together we built something steady, not flashy, routine, peace, the kind of love that doesn't require chaos to feel real. So tell me, honestly, did I cross a line by dating the man she betrayed? Or did I just refuse to keep paying the price for her behavior? Drop crossed if you think I went too far, or fair game if you think consequences don't stop at professional boundaries. Because in the final part, you're going to hear what happened when Olivia finally tried to face me again. And the choice I made then says everything about who actually won. The day Olivia asked to meet me, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because of the audacity. After everything she'd done, after the lies, the gaslighting, the way she tried to paint me as unstable when I refused to stay quiet, she suddenly wanted closure. She sent the message through a mutual contact, not even directly, which felt very on brand for someone who never liked facing consequences head-on. I almost said no. Actually, my first instinct was no, hard no. I didn't owe her my time, my energy, or my forgiveness. But then I realized something. This wasn't about giving her peace. This was about reclaiming mine. We met in a public park, middle of the day, neutral territory. She looked different, smaller somehow, not just physically, but emotionally. No perfect blazer, no polished therapist voice, just a woman sitting on a bench who had lost control of the narrative she'd been so comfortable manipulating. She apologized, not the half apologies she sent before, not the "I'm sorry you felt hurt" kind. She admitted she violated my trust. She admitted she abused her position. She admitted she knew what she was doing long before she was caught. And when I asked her why she would destroy multiple lives for something so reckless, she didn't have a clever answer. She said she liked the feeling of being wanted, being admired, being chosen. And there it was, the truth that explained everything. She didn't fall in love. She fed on validation. And the moment that validation came with consequences, she collapsed. I told her I wasn't sorry for reporting her, that she ended her own career the moment she decided ethics didn't apply to her. And here's the part that surprised even me. I told her I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I refused to carry her weight anymore. Forgiveness isn't reconciliation, it's release. And when I walked away from that bench, I felt lighter than I had in a year. Meanwhile, life kept moving forward. Ethan and I moved in together, not dramatically, just gradually. Toothbrushes, shared grocery lists, routines that felt almost boring in the best way. The chaos that defined my life for months faded into something quieter and sturdier. And then something happened that reframed everything. At our wedding reception, a woman approached me and said she'd been one of Olivia's clients too, her daughter actually, and Olivia had done something similar, encouraged a breakup, crossed lines, inserted herself where she had no business being. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about me. Reporting her didn't just protect my future, it protected others. And that's when I stopped questioning whether I'd gone too far. Because accountability that prevents harm isn't revenge, it's responsibility. So I want you to weigh in right here. When someone abuses power repeatedly and only stops when exposed, is forgiveness enough, or is accountability the real act of compassion? Drop accountability if you think consequences matter more than comfort, or forgive if you think walking away should always be the goal. Because in the final part, you're going to hear what happened when Olivia finally. By the time everything settled, I realized something uncomfortable but powerful. I wasn't angry anymore, and that scared me more than the rage ever did. Because anger at least gives you a script. Anger tells you who the villain is, who you are, and what you're supposed to do next. Calm doesn't. Calm hands you the pen and says, "Now write the rest yourself." Ethan and I built a life that wasn't loud. No dramatic posts, no subtweets, no victory laps. Just mornings with coffee, evenings with walks, conversations that didn't feel like negotiations. The kind of peace you don't recognize at first because chaos trained you to think intensity equals love. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for karma to boomerang back at me, for someone to tell me I'd crossed a moral line and now I had to pay. It never came. What came instead was clarity. Olivia didn't lose her career because of me. She lost it because she treated ethics like optional rules and people like props. Jackson didn't lose me because I changed. He lost me because he chose secrecy over honesty and comfort over character. And I didn't win because I married her husband. I won because I stopped accepting stories that made me small. That's the part people miss. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge is loud and empty. This was about refusing to carry shame that didn't belong to me. It was about choosing truth, even when it made people uncomfortable. And yes, some people still think I went too far. They think I should have disappeared quietly, let time erase it, spared everyone the mess. But silence only protects the person who did the harm. It never protects the person who survived it. When you stop covering for someone else's wrongdoing, you don't ruin their life, you reveal it. And what happens after that is on them. Ethan proposed on a quiet hike. No audience, no speech. He said I was the plot twist he never saw coming.
I said yes without hesitation, not because my life had been perfect, but because it was finally honest. We got married surrounded by people who knew the whole story and loved us anyway. And here's the moment that sealed it for me. An older woman came up to me at the reception and thanked me for reporting Olivia. She said it stopped her from hurting more people. I stood there in a wedding dress, realizing that the worst thing that ever happened to me had quietly protected strangers I would never meet. That's not revenge, that's consequence doing its job. So let me ask you the question that actually matters. If telling the truth destroys someone who was built on lies, did you destroy them or did they collapse under their own weight? I want you to argue about it in the comments. Did I cross a line or did I finally draw one? Share this with someone who's been told to be the bigger person while swallowing injustice. And if you've ever been betrayed and wondered whether speaking up was worth the fallout, stay here,